Today, we're diving into the book of Daniel, and let me tell you, this is a story that unfolds right in the glittering but incredibly dangerous heart of the ancient Babylonian Empire. It's a tale about a few young men, captured and exiled, who have to figure out how to survive in the world's most powerful court, with pretty much nothing but their wits and a faith that just won't quit.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with Daniel's personal struggles as a young exile, then walk through the literally life or death challenges he and his friends had to face. And then we'll pivot to those epic, world-spanning visions that have had people talking for centuries.
You know, this question right here is really at the core of the whole book. It creates this constant tug-of-war between the absolute in-your-face power of a king like Nebuchadnezzar and a different kind of unseen, higher power. It really makes you ask, where does real authority actually come from? All right, let's start at the beginning. We meet Daniel, a young nobleman from Judah who's now a captive in Babylon. He and his buddies have been handpicked, essentially drafted, to serve the most powerful man on the planet, King Nebuchadnezzar. And these guys were the best of the best, the top draft picks, you could say. The text says they were gifted in all wisdom and had no blemish. But here's the thing. Their first big test wasn't about what they knew. It was about what they believed. And it all started with what was on the dinner menu. Now, this request, it seems so simple, right? But it was incredibly bold. You have to understand, in that culture, saying no thanks to the king's food wasn't just a diet choice. It was a political act. It was like rejecting the king himself. For Daniel, this was the first line in the sand he had to draw to hold on to who he was. And get this, after just 10 days, the results of their little experiment were impossible to ignore. They actually looked healthier than everyone else who was chowing down on the rich royal food. This small win, this first act of defiance, earned them some serious respect, and more importantly, it set the stage for much, much bigger showdowns to come. Okay, so their next challenge is way more terrifying. King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream that shakes him to his core. I mean, it's so bad that when he wakes up, he can't even remember what he dreamed, only the pure terror he felt. So the king makes this completely impossible demand. His own magicians and astrologers are freaking out, saying there's not a man on earth who can do this. The king is furious and orders all the wise men in Babylon to be executed, and that includes Daniel and his friends. So with their lives on the line, Daniel steps up and just asks for one night, trusting that the secret will be revealed to him. And it works. The secret is revealed. The dream was about this towering statue. As Daniel explains it, each part, each material, represents a huge world empire. It starts with the head of gold, which is Nebuchadnezzar's own Babylonian kingdom. The whole statue is basically a timeline of human power, getting less valuable as you go down from gold to iron mixed with clay. But wait, the dream isn't over. Then, out of nowhere, this supernatural stone, one cut without hands, comes flowing in and just smashes the statue to dust. Daniel's interpretation of this is a total bombshell. All of these powerful human empires, they're all going to be swept away by a divine kingdom that will last forever. So if you thought that was intense, buckle up. The theme of defiance just keeps escalating. But this time, it's Daniel's friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in the hot seat. It seems Nebuchadnezzar, inspired by his dream, builds this massive golden statue and issues a very simple command. Everybody has to bow down and worship it, or else. The king's challenge here is just dripping with arrogance. He's basically taunting them. For him, this isn't just about politics. It's a contest of power between his authority and their God. He's really asking, so what God do you think is strong enough to save you from me? And their comeback is one of the most powerful statements of faith, maybe ever. They tell the king they believe their God can save them, but then they add that critical phrase, but if not. In other words, their faithfulness isn't based on getting rescued, it's absolute no matter what happens. So they're thrown into a furnace that's been cranked up 7 times hotter than usual. But when the king looks inside, he's totally stunned. He says, "Look, I see 4 men, untied, walking around in the fire, and they're not even hurt." Fast forward a bunch of years, we're under a new king, and an elderly Daniel faces an almost identical situation. A new law is passed, an unchangeable law, that says no one can pray to anyone but the king for 30 days. Daniel, of course, just keeps on praying like he always does, in plain sight, and gets thrown into a den of lions. It's the same playbook all over again. and unshakable faith up against an unchangeable law. Okay, so right around the halfway point, the book does a complete 180. The whole perspective shifts. We go from reading stories about Daniel to seeing the apocalyptic visions that Daniel himself has. The camera sort of zooms out from the Babylonian court to this grand, sweeping view of world history.
In his first major vision, Daniel sees these four bizarre beasts coming up out of the sea. There's a lion with eagle's wings, a hungry-looking bear, a leopard with four heads, and a final, absolutely terrifying beast with iron teeth. And as we're about to see, these aren't just random monsters. They connect directly back to Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue. This chart really lays it all out. The connection is undeniable. See, the king's dream saw human history as this glorious, shining statue. But Daniel's vision, it reveals what those empires are really like from a divine point of view. A bunch of violent, predatory beasts. It's the same timeline, but a totally different and much darker perspective on their character.
Now we're heading into the final chapters, and this is where the book's most intricate prophecies live. The angel Gabriel actually shows up to explain to Daniel these visions that stretch way, way into the future, detailing specific conflicts between empires and what will ultimately happen to Daniel's people. A central part of all this is the famous 70 weeks prophecy. It's a pretty complex timeline. Think of it like a prophetic calendar. It lays out a 490-year period and predicts some major events for Jerusalem's future, including the arrival and the fate of a figure called Messiah the Prince.
Throughout these final visions, you see this kind of symbolic language popping up. Phrases like a time, times, and half a time. So what does that even mean? Well, it's code. A symbolic way of describing a future period of really intense persecution that's going to be cut short by a final divine judgment.
And the way the book ends is just so fascinating. Daniel is completely wiped out physically and emotionally by everything he's seen. And then he's told to shut up the words and seal the book. He's told that these incredible revelations aren't really for his time. They're being saved for a distant time of the end.
And that leaves us right here with the book's great enduring question. Are we supposed to read Daniel as a detailed roadmap of the future, like a crystal ball? Or is the main point something more timeless, a message that every human empire, no matter how big and powerful it seems, is temporary and ultimately has to answer to a higher authority? It's that very tension that has made the book of Daniel so absolutely fascinating for thousands of years.